iPhone 15 Pro Max versus Sony FX30. How good is the iPhone when you are shooting in log format versus the cinema camera Sony FX30? So let's find out, can you use the iPhone 15 Pro Max as a B or C camera for your needs? Let's go. As a disclaimer, guys, I have to say that I'm not considering an iPhone as a replacement of my Sony FX30. I'm just curious how good it is compared to the cinema camera in different lighting conditions, and can you use it as a B or C cam, as I said before, and in which situations the iPhone is going to be a great solution if you don't have your main camera with you, or just in case. If you are interested, I'll put the price of the kit of the FX30 and the lens I'm using right now right here, but I'm not considering the price in this video. These are two different worlds. So first, let's have a look at the main camera sensor of the iPhone: 24mm full-frame equivalent f1.8 and 48 megapixels. So here are two log images graded, and which camera is which? Can you guess, guys? 3, 2, 1. So there it is. Can you tell the difference between those two cameras in good lighting conditions during the sunny day and without considering a good shallow depth of field, so we're shooting just the landscape? If we zoom in 500% scale, we do see the difference. The iPhone has a bit more blurry detail, more noise reduction, but still, we are zoomed in 500%, guys, and those results are great. So if you don't want shallow depth of field in your shot, you just want to shoot something like a landscape, the iPhone is a great solution that is in your pocket right now. Now let's switch to 60 frames per second. Both cameras get a touch blurrier, but also both cameras are showing great results. So in both, the 60 FPS is totally usable, and you can use those for slow motion if you want to. So now let's have a look at the 0.5x camera, 13mm full-frame equivalent and f2.2 aperture. Once again, both images graded. The iPhone is much wider. My widest APS-C lens is Viltrox 13mm, it's a 20mm full-frame equivalent, and on this 100% scale, it looks more or less the same. But if we're going to pixel peep, especially in the corner of the image, 500% scale, you can definitely tell that the iPhone's footage is much more noisy and noise reduced. So a lot of noise reduction is being applied, that is why we lose a lot of detail. When we look at the center crop of the image, we see the difference in the focal length and the field of view, but still the iPhone has much less detail, so that is why I prefer using 1x camera when I can, and I just occasionally use 0.5x camera. And when we switch to 60 FPS, we can see that the image is still pretty crisp and it's not degrading, switching from 30 FPS to 60 FPS. And by the way, right now I'm using the Apple LOG through the Blackmagic Camera app, which is a free app, and we're using H.265 codec in this example. And here's the 2x camera. It's a 2x crop from the main camera sensor on the iPhone, so we get additional crop to this pretty tiny sensor as well. But looking at 100% scale images, I cannot really tell a huge difference between those two. Of course, guys, when we punch in, we can see that the level of detail is much less on the iPhone, but still, if you are going to show it on social media or just, look at your laptop without pixel peeping, it's more than usable in good lighting conditions. That's important. And now, guys, let's talk about stabilization. The iPhone is going to destroy the camera in this regard in good lighting conditions. So here's the stabilization test: 0.5x camera handheld and the steady shot standard on Sony FX30, so without any crop, and you can tell the huge difference between those two cameras. The FX30 is a lot shakier. Here is the steady shot active. I'm using my best ninja walk. I'm walking as fluid as I can, but still the steady shot active is not doing the best job. Keep in mind that this lens is not a native Sony lens, and with Sony lenses, the native lenses, the stabilization is a bit better. And when I was running, it was super shaky. So in the previous example, I was using the standard camera app with the highest level of stabilization possible, but if you want to reduce the size of the files, you can use the Blackmagic Camera app in H.265 codec for much smaller file sizes. And right here, I'm showing you the stabilization of this app, and it's much worse. It has 3 levels of stabilization: the standard, the cinematic, and the extreme. And if you use the cinematic or extreme, you'll have a huge lag in the image, and it will be like super late to your movements. You turn the camera and then the image goes eh. So if you want to use the best stabilization, you'd better pick the main camera app, the standard one. So let's have a look. So in this example, you can right away say that the standard stabilization of Blackmagic Camera app is doing much worse job than the standard camera app on the iPhone, and it's more or less comparable to the Sony, but still it is a bit more fluid. Also in the Sony, we have an option of recording gyroscopic data to your file, and using some software like Catalyst Browse for instance, it will be cropping into the image and reducing the shakes. And here I'm running with two cameras, so the action mode on the iPhone 2.8K resolution 0.5x camera, and also the Catalyst Browse stabilized footage with the iPhone. And guys, I can clearly see that the 2.8K is not as sharp, especially with 0.5x camera, so I do recommend using 1x camera on the iPhone with this setup in active steady shot and active stabilization action mode on the iPhone. But if you want to have extremely smooth footage with your iPhone, the action mode is a great addition. So now I've put both cameras onto the DJI Ronin S. I'm having the steady shot active on the Sony FX30, and those two images look just simply perfect. I'm using the Blackmagic Camera app and running, and as you can see, it is still more stable than the steady shot active plus a gimbal on the iPhone. So guys, a little vlogging test. At least I can see myself with this camera and flippy screen, and with the iPhone I'm using the 0.5x camera in log format, also the active steady shot with the FX30 with the Viltrox 13mm f1.4 lens at f1.4. so here is what you can get in vlogging setup like so. And the microphone quality as well, by the way. And right now guys, you are looking at 1x camera with the iPhone and the same camera lens combination with the Sony. How do you like the footage? The main camera app, the standard one. And guys, we also have a selfie camera, which is shooting me right now on the iPhone 15 Pro Max. I don't think it's a good quality, but still it's an option. So now let's talk about dynamic range of the iPhone in log. So Gerald and Dunn did the test at ISO 1480, or from ISOs like 1250, you can get up to 13.8 stops of dynamic range, and it's a huge number. So let's have a look at my test. Here I'm using the ISO 1250, the native ISO, let me say, on the iPhone, and an ND filter. And on the Sony, we're using the ISO 800, also with an ND filter. And as you can see, guys, we do retain a lot of detail from both cameras. We have very cloudy day with bright sun just hitting those clouds, they're white. And also we have this little Pikachu toy from my daughter, and it's in the shadow. So let's have a closer look at those two images, and here I can tell that the iPhone is showing some algorithms of noise reduction. We don't see as much noise. And for the image that is 1250 ISO on this tiny sensor shooting in log, that it's that clean, that's impressive, guys. But still, I do see the noise reduction algorithm being applied. On the Sony, the image is a bit more noisy, but you have an advantage that it's not as aggressive on the Sony in terms of noise reduction. You can apply something like neat video in the post-production for the Sony and get cleaner and better results, also sharper results, and also just in general cleaner in terms of noise. But all in all, guys, huge thumbs up for Apple LOG for making this good of a dynamic range and giving us the possibility to match the iPhone's footage to the Sony camera footage and having this similar dynamic range on both. So now let's talk cinematic mode with artificial blur, and in this mode we don't have a log profile, only the standard profile on the iPhone, so we have over sharpened image, no shadows on my face, it looks super flat and artificially made. Also the artificial blur is really strange, especially between my fingers, so it's not the best one. And of course, guys, the optical background blur or the bokeh is going to be a ton better if you're shooting people or even objects, because in cinematic mode you also do get this weird like background separation of the object. It looks okay on the smaller scale, but when you zoom in you definitely can tell that it's artificial, and it's super sad that we cannot use log in this mode. I would love to see the implementation of log with the cinematic mode, but I don't think that it's going to be possible anytime soon. So to me, the cinematic mode is the no-go on the iPhone. If you're planning to shoot in log and then trying to combine it with cinematic mode, it will be really hard to do. One more area where the iPhone is really struggling is super slow motion. We have only 1080p, 120p and 240p, whereas on the Sony FX30 in 1.5x extra crop we have 4K 120, and there is really no comparison between those two images. So if you want to use slow motion with the iPhone, I do suggest that you are shooting in log format in 60 FPS and slowing it down to maybe 50 or 40% depending on if you're using the 24p timeline or the 30p timeline. 120p also doesn't have log profile, so it's a no-go 100%. I do not recommend filming in this 1080p garbage over sharpened footage on the iPhone. I really hope that they're going to improve the slow motion capabilities of their phones, like 4K 120 would be nice because Sony flagship phones do have it for like many years already. So Apple, here you go, just give us super slow motion in 4K at least.
Unfortunately, guys, the time lapses are still 1080p only and no log functionality. It's a shame, to be honest. I would like to see 4K time lapses, but it is what it is for now.
And a few words about minimal focus and distance. Here I'm using the Tamron 17 to 70mm f2.8 lens on 17mm, and we do get this kind of image compared to 0.5x camera on the iPhone, which has extremely close minimal focus and distance, but the image does look really distorted and not really true to life. So in this example, I'm showing you the 1x camera on the iPhone with the minimal focus and distance, and it does look much better. We do have some bokeh, it looks a lot more natural, but you cannot get closer than this without using some diopters or extra lenses, filters, etc. So I do recommend shooting in 1x with the minimal focus and distance, but it's not that big. On the 13 Pro Max, for instance, it was much closer, but on the 14 and especially the 15, it's pretty far away. But you do get pretty nice bokeh as well. So now guys, let's have a look at the low light performance. I'm curious how Apple LOG compares to S-Log3 in low light conditions at night. So here at the left, I'm using the 4K 30 1x camera, Apple LOG graded f1.8 and ISO 2500 compared to ISO 2500 on the Sony f1.4 13mm Viltrox lens with an active steady shot, so it's a bit cropped in. And looking at those images from far away at 100% scale, it does look more noisy and less detailed on the iPhone, but all in all, from this distance it looks okay. When we punch in, we do see a lot of noise reduction on the iPhone and a bit of sharpening on top, so we have a lot more detail on the Sony image, and if we apply just a little bit of noise reduction like with Neat Video, we'll get amazingly good image, like mwah. But what if we film not in log, so in standard profile on the standard camera app of the iPhone, so you simply pull it out of your pocket and start filming. So here it is on 1x camera, it doesn't look that bad to be honest, but when we zoom in we see all the Apple things that they're doing, so a ton of noise reduction, so the image is getting much blurrier, and then you can see the over sharpening applied on top. In this regard, Sony is looking better, but I think that the standard camera app without log in low light is doing a touch better than in log format. So now we're using the standard camera app without log on the iPhone, but with a 0.5x camera compared to f2.8 and ISO 10,000 on the FX30. And as you can tell guys, the image on 0.5x camera, not in log, but in low light, it looks really soft and super over processed. You lose a huge amount of detail, and when we zoom in you can definitely tell something about the image on the 0.5x camera, but you cannot really tell what's in there. So it's super noise reduced, super blurry, over sharpened. Don't use 0.5x camera in low light guys. And here we have Apple LOG, f2.2 aperture, ISO 3200, 0.5x camera on the left, and Sony FX30 at 2500 ISO, f1.4 on the right side, and you can really see the difference is just night and day. So in Apple LOG, 0.5x camera gets super mushy, noisy, you get a lot of noise reduction, so 0.5x camera is a no-go in low light. And just out of curiosity, here is the bokeh with 1x camera minimal focus and distance versus the Viltrox lens. So here's a different test, ISO 2500 on both cameras, 1x camera in low light, but as you can tell guys, it does look not that bad compared to the FX30. Yeah, we do have a little sensor reflection on the iPhone, but it's much better than before, so the Apple coatings are doing a better job than before for sure. but still you do have those extremely irritating small sensor reflections all over the image when you're pointing it to a bright source of light, especially at night. So here it is with a 0.5x camera in Apple LOG 3200 ISO, and it's a no-brainer, so don't use 0.5x camera once again. In terms of stabilization and sensor reflections, yeah, the 0.5x camera is more stable, but the sensor reflections are pretty strong as well, but it's once again better than before. Here's the stabilization test. Of course, the Sony is going to lose this test in terms of stabilization, but on the iPhone you get a lot of artifacts like doubling of the image, sensor reflections, so you'd better use 1x lens if you want the best footage possible at night. So here's one more test with 1x camera. It's looking not that bad, to be honest, compared to the APS-C camera, but those sensor reflections are really irritating and there is no way to eliminate those in post. So all in all, it's a good performance from the iPhone, but still it does lose to the camera.
And guys, here is the selfie camera. It's super cold and windy out here, so the selfie camera should have real problems, and I hope you can see the difference right here.
And guys, you might ask me, where's the 5x lens on the iPhone 15 Pro Max? And the thing is that I have already compared it to the Sony FX30 with 85mm lens, the sharpest in the world, budget 85mm lens. And if you are curious in this video, I'll leave a link down below so you can have a look at this huge and detailed comparison video after this one. And now guys, let's talk about some differences between those two filming devices. So the first biggest difference to me is the ability to record simultaneously on two memory cards with the FX30, so we have redundant backup, and to record redundant backup on the iPhone, you need to plug the HDMI monitor that supports recording, like Atomos Ninja 5. So in this way, you'll be able to record redundant backup, but you do need an external recorder. For the Sony camera, you just need two SD cards. So the second thing is the overheating issue. I have my iPhone 15 Pro Max recording for 40 minutes as for now, and it's been okay, but still guys, the Sony FX30 has the built-in fan. It never overheats, like never ever. With the iPhone, you do need an external fan, probably, or you need something else, like shooting in colder environments or whatever, but still it's an issue. And I did have an overheating issue with my iPhone 15 Pro Max when I was filming with the HDMI dongle connected with the monitor for like 1.5 hours, maybe 2 hours straight, so keep that in mind. One more benefit of the Sony FX30 is the flippy screen, so you can see yourself at any time and you can adjust the angles. With the iPhone, it's extremely uncomfortable to shoot from the low angle or from a high angle. You just can't do everything. Yeah, you can connect an external monitor or use your Apple Watch, but it's not as convenient as a built-in flippy screen on the Sony FX30. But the iPhone, on the other hand, has an advantage of brighter screen, so if you are shooting in bright sunlight, it'll get up to 2000 nits of brightness, and here is the difference on the example I'm showing you right now. But the Sony's flippy screen is not that bright, so keep that in mind guys. But also iPhone tends to dim the screen when you're recording for longer times and it's hot outside. It is going to dim, and at some point it's going to be more or less the same between those two cameras, but at first it is an advantage to the iPhone. One more thing to consider is the battery life. So the Sony FX30 can record it up to 4K 60 FPS for 2 hours, and it's going to drain the battery completely. But if you have a spare battery, you can simply plug a fresh one in and record almost indefinitely or using the USB Type-C, and don't be afraid of overheating. But with the iPhone, if you plug in an external power, you do have an overheating problem because it will heat soak the chassis of the phone, and all in all you'll get worse results in this term. But as for now, you can record a lot with this phone on 100% charge for like, I don't know, maybe 4 hours, maybe even 5 hours on a single charge without charging it simultaneously. So it's a good battery life for this phone if you use it for like a C cam, B cam, or just a camera that you pull out of your pocket and shoot something if you don't have your camera with you. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is the most obvious. It's interchangeable lenses. So for Sony FX30 you can have a super wide angle lens, super telephoto lens, super fast lenses, super different lenses, and it's a real advantage. The iPhone is okay. You can have something like Freewell Sherpa kit, which I have somewhere here. Yeah, something like this, with different lenses and all that stuff, so you can have a bit wider angle, a bit telephoto, but all in all, guys, it's not as convenient and optically not as great, so I'm just, you know all that stuff, guys. Of course, the FX30 is going to be a better choice, but the iPhone is having a pretty good range, the focal range from 13mm to 120. Also, the 2x camera in good lighting conditions is showing not bad results, so it's convenient, but the real camera is a real camera, and there's no comparison like head to head. It's just two different tools, and I want to use them like in addition to each other. So guys, to conclude, I really hope that I did answer the question if you can use your iPhone 15 Pro Max or 15 Pro as a B or C camera for your iPhone, or maybe as an additional camera if you don't have your main camera with you. Like, pull it out from your pocket and make a great shot. So if you did enjoy this video, guys, please smash the like and subscribe buttons and hit the notifications bell. And the next video for you to watch is the 5x camera on the 15 Pro Max versus 85mm, the sharpest on the market. And my voice is getting really tired. I'm recording for 50 minutes already. So thank you so much for watching. I'm gonna see you in this video, guys. Take care. Bye.